Hi, Rick. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
It's an honor to speak to you. I'm a massive fan of that 50s, 60s rock and roll, so it means a lot to get to
Uh,
speak to you.
oh yeah, that's the. I think. Well, I'm a little bit biased, but I think that was the best era, for pop music. Things have changed slightly, but it's all good. It's all rock and roll.
But it was brilliant, wasn't it? Like, what was it like for you hearing this sound coming from America?
Well, it was very good for me. I was, because I got lucky, as they say. Um, I started off with a skiffle group. Excuse me, there's a little helicopter flying over. Um, yeah, it started with a skiffle group, and I never really thought in those days that I would have a hit record, et cetera, et cetera. But slowly but surely, I worked towards it, and I I got lucky, and it happened. So that was great.
Bill Haley was a big influence on you, wasn't he?
Oh, Bill Haley, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he was the pioneer, and when I heard "Rock Around the Clock," and I think along with millions of others, I heard, oh, it's the devil's music, but I like it. So it was great, and I wanted to be part of that scene. That's
Well, wait, I know you grew up in a musical family, but when did you know you had such a good voice?
I still don't know that. No, they well, someone has to tell you that, and they're saying, "Hey, you know what? We think you can sing, and why don't we why don't we make a record?" And initially, I knew I could sing, and basically stay in tune. Um, and the early skiffle songs were very easy, just and it takes a worried man to sing a worried song. I mean, they were very sort of simple. Uh, I guess a derivation of American blues and stuff like, so those earlier songs are very easy to sing, and so um, I joined in. Yeah.
You moved over to England when you were 14. What was that move like? Like, what was your life like before that? And then what was it like making that move?
Well, my life before that was I was in India. Um, it was it was the time of the when it was the British Empire, and I was in a boarding school from the age of 6, and I've told this story before. Boring, I know, but so I was a bit young to be chucked onto a train and said, "You're going to boarding school, bye bye now." And but that was fun. I got used to that because everyone did it apparently. And so then I was in school mainly uh, until um, the time came for me to leave because the boarding school deal was where you'd go to school for 9 months and then come home for 3 months, for the holidays. Basically that was it. So, but I was kind of, protected. There was a lot going on in India itself, and um, in those days, in the early 40s, um, and there was a war going on not a big war like World War II. That was going on as well after that at some point, you know. And I was unaware of all that because I was too young. I was away from it. Yeah, so that it was amazing. Yeah,
Well, you sang in like a talent contest in
yeah.
1960. Can you remember that day? What that day was like?
I remember everything about that day. Actually, well, not everything because I was in shock for most of it. But I'd been talked my girlfriend at the time had said, there's a talent contest in Chelsea. Why don't you go down there, and I said, oh, all right then, and I did. So I got my guitar and my amp, and got on the train, and from there I got on the bus and went to Chelsea to the Classic Cinema and got set up and signed up for the contest. It was a contest for Cadbury's chocolate to advertise drinking chocolate, and they were looking for someone to kind of sing about drinking chocolate, I guess, and so I entered the contest. Yeah,
It's crazy that that contest
I
really
know.
changed your life, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and the best part of that contest was aside from the fact of me deciding to go and do it, was was meeting my manager there because he wasn't my manager at the time. He had been walking down the street and decided to walk into the classic cinema because he said, oh, yeah, because he was an A&R guy, and I couldn't believe it. And he walks in. I mean, I believe it now because that's the story. So he said that he walked in and noticed that the contest was going on. He noticed my when I got up and did my bit. He noticed that he said, "Oh, that's all right." And they happened to be looking for somebody uh, that they can promote, him and his partner. So, I mean, to talk about being at the right time in the right place,
Yeah,
the right place at the right time, whatever. Uh, that was my lucky day.
crazy. Like you
Yeah,
won the contest as well, obviously, with the
yeah,
Cadbury chocolate. You
yeah,
actually
yeah.
wrote the song, didn't you, for the jingle?
Well, I wrote a song about hot chocolate, and because and the song went, "My baby don't care about my kissing, she don't care about my hugging. All she wants is a hot chocolate drink, and she's hot chocolate crazy, So I wrote the song thinking it might be a commercial, but it never made it to be a commercial because before they could, and even though we did record the song, my managers, Michael and Philip, said, well, we might as well record this, because they might want to use it and blah blah blah, etc. But that didn't happen, and then I got signed to Decca, so that was it.
What was that like signing to Decca?
Well, it was an amazing thing. Well, once again, a stroke of luck. And my two managers, Michael and Philip, happened to be, as I said, A&R men, and they'd been working for Pi Records because I did Hot Chocolate Crazy on Pi Records, and then they said, "Well, this is not going to work, but let's get you to this other label, which they had connections to, and they said we're going to find a songwriter to write you a song, um, and off we go." So I said, "Okay, let's do that." So we signed with Decca, and next thing was Michael and Philip found the songwriter who they happened to know because he'd written "What Do You Want" for Adam Faith. So he'd written, and he'd written quite a few big hits already. So they said, write our boy a song, So he did, and he came up with "Well, I Ask You."
And it went straight in at number one as
Straight to
well.
number one. I know. What? It was just amazing,
It
and
all feel like it was happening really quickly as well.
it, things do happen very quickly, and I've noticed that they happen very quickly now as well. I mean, things haven't changed that much. You've got to you've got to keep on your toes, and you've got to know what you're doing. And now it's a new world. It's internet, digital world. So, but in those days, it's the same sort of thing. As soon as you had a hit, you got to have a follow up, right
Yeah,
away, etc. And all that. Sometimes it only took like a few months, a couple of months before the next one came out.
yeah. You
Yeah.
had like five hit singles in about 2 years, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Case in point. So when I asked you came out, they said we need a follow up. So they went back to Johnny Worth. That's Van Dyke's like his his other name. And he came up with "Get Lost," which was the next hit, and that was a hit. And then he came up with "Forget Me Not," like about I would say about a year later, and that was a hit. So we're going, oh my God, that's you know. Um, so that was pretty amazing that all that happened in that short space of time.
It must have been a brilliant time professionally, but what was it like in life at that point? Like when this music scene's happening and you're
Yeah,
there
yeah.
the centre
Well,
and stuff.
life didn't change much for me at that time in the beginning, obviously, because I was living in Norbury, which is near Croydon, and so basically they were. phoning me to do things, doing, publicity things. And then I didn't have a car at the time. And then eventually I did get one, I was very, and, and then had to do all the publicity stuff. Um, but I didn't leave home for a long, long time. I was quite comfortable at home. And so I commuted and did everything I had to. And even when it came down to doing the tours, because eventually, once the next thing you know, if you have a hit, you're on tour, you
Mm.
know. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned there life didn't change much, but obviously you'll have got more fame and people are recognising you. Was that easy to deal with, the fame side of things?
Uh, it was easy. I thought it was easy in the beginning, because it's like, you're in this brand new world and suddenly you're doing stuff that you'd never dreamed you'd be doing. But then you say, well, I'll get used to it. This is fine. It's not bad. And I was sort of young enough and sort of uh, to just, and also pretty stupid, but also willing to do anything to kind of keep the thing going. Because once it starts, you know, you're you're suddenly in the spotlight, so to speak, and so they have to behave accordingly. So I mean, it has its drawbacks, because you suddenly start, you know, getting more entitled, and you start thinking you deserve more or something. And so it gets tricky.
A lot of acts, especially back then, would change their name. What was that like? Was you always going to go with Eden Kane, or was there another name you was thinking of? Like, what was that like?
Well, my real name is Richard Sarstedt, and at the time, it was the era when people were changing their names, like Billy, Fury, Marty, and Cliff. They'd all been, and I'd been watching them on the television. They started a couple of years ahead of me, 1958, 59, and then I started to to be in a band and stuff in this. Well, and I was in a small band. It was a skiffle and then a little band. But I was watching them on, oh boy, I was watching them on television and going, wow, this is incredible. So I was greatly influenced not only by the American rock scene, but by them too.
So, you were a big part, obviously, of that rock and roll scene, and then later on, the bands come along, and you've got like the Beatles, the Kinks,
Yeah,
all them
yeah,
bands, and Rolling
yeah.
Stones as well. What was that like? Like you passing down the torch, but it kind of had an impact on your career too, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think it affected most solo singers for a short period of time, when suddenly it was all self-contained bands, like the Beatles and the Searchers and Jerry and all those guys, uh, and suddenly it was like a worldwide thing, because even though I had tried to sort of make it in America, I took a trip to New York and with my managers, and we were talking to record people and all this kind of stuff. But nothing happened for me there. But when the bands came in, yeah, it's because, and also then in '63, I think it was when the Beatles had "Love Me Do," and then they went on, obviously to hit worldwide success. I was thinking, well, that's it, mate. You better start packing your bag, and it's over, type of thing. And it was in a way. And so I toured around, and that's what made me go to Australia.
But before that, around this time, you did have Boys Cry, which is I think is your best song.
Exactly, exactly. That was another big sort of surprise, because in those days I didn't know there were certain people in the record business and other who were connected to the record. They knew a hit record when they heard one, or they knew a hit song when they heard one. I didn't know. You never know what people are going to like. But it so happened that I had changed record company. I'd left Decca, and I'd also changed management at the time because they'd split up and gone their separate ways. So I'm going. So now what? Um, all the bands are in. What am I going to do? And all this. So then I found this guy called Vic Billings, who was a manager, and he happened to be the manager of Dusty Springfield
Yeah,
as well. So he said, "Okay, let's go with with this other record company." Well, I left Decca, went to Fontana, and they uh, the guys at Fontana found this song for me, "Boys Cry," written by Buddy Kaye, who happens to be an American, you know, and yeah, so that was another you know, lucky break for me because then I'm on TV again and going and doing Top of the Pops and Thank You Lucky Stars and all that kind of stuff. And that's where I got to meet all those guys who'd ruined my career. I said, thanks a lot, man. Thank you. But yeah, but that's when I got to meet the guys, the Beatles and all these guys, because they had hit records and I had Boys Cry, so I was lucky enough to then sort of have a look at what was about to come,
yeah.
with the bands. Yeah.
What was those tours like then with like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones?
Well, I never toured with those guys because I'd always toured with people who were solo singers. The bands toured in their own sphere, shall we say? And so there was a definite. Uh, it was defined with what year you had your hit records and what year you were you were a star. So all the '60s guys or the late '50s and '60s guys, like I toured with Billy Fury a lot. I toured with Marty. Uh, After a little bit later, when we came back to revisit the '60s on these solid gold rock and roll tours. I didn't actually tour with those guys. I met them on TV shows and things like that, or at various functions and things. Yeah.
Have you got a favourite song of your own then from this period?
A favorite song of my own. Yeah, it's a song called "A Little Bit of Rock and Roll."
Yeah, let's talk about that. How did that song come
Yeah,
about?
yeah. That's just I was not performing that song in the early days because I hadn't written it yet. But I wrote it while I was touring with with Marty and the Wildcats, um, and guys and John Layton, um, Mike Berry, Mark Winter. There was another little era of tours that I did with all these guys, and so I decided to write a song, a little rocker, so the kind of a closing song. I thought that this would be something I could close the show with. It's a rock and roll thing because I used to close my act with a song called "I Don't Know Why," which was a hit, and so it has this big ending and all this kind of stuff. So I thought that, but then I thought to myself, that's not a way to close a song on a ballad if you can help. So I wrote the song, and it started to go down really well, and so then it wasn't until just so I'd recorded it, but I hadn't done anything with it, and so then anyway, a little bit of rock and roll story. That's another story, but that's why I'm here anyway. So so I wrote it. So basically, I found a, a producer here, a fellow called Michael Lloyd, who's had a lot of success back in the days of the Beach Boys, and so Mike said, "Why don't we redo this? It's a good song, Rick." And I said, "Okay, let's do it." So here I am.
But you mentioned you moved to Australia. Was it hard to leave that like life behind that you've been doing for a few years with the music?
Well, if you become very insulated in what you're doing. Basically, if you suddenly say, "All right, you're a pop singer," you're going to keep working and get as much work as you can and keep going. So I was that was the central part of my life, basically.
Yeah.
Um, and the rest of it was, I mean, I loved being in England. I loved touring around and doing all this stuff, and uh, but when the time came, I'm thinking I got to think about my so-called career. I've got to do something. And when I got an offer from Australia, and my mom was still in England, living in England, and my brothers also lived in England most of the time, except when they except when they moved to like Sweden and Spain temporarily, whatever. Um, so basically, I was never out of touch with them, and I'd been to Australia already on a tour. So basically, I've there was another new world to kind of you know work with, and that was a lot of fun. I lived there for just under 2 years, and it was terrific. I loved it. I did a lot. I toured all around Australia, uh, just doing my shows and stuff. And I had a TV show briefly, and so I really enjoyed Australia. And I didn't miss England that much because I knew I was going back.
You mentioned your brothers there. You started a band with them in the 70s. What was that like?
My brother, yeah, um, when I took him, my brothers have both passed away, unfortunately. Um, but um, But I was surprised as anything because I was happened to be living in Australia when someone said you better watch watch the television. So I turned on the telly and there was my brother Peter singing "Where Do You Go to My Lovely." He's sitting on a stool, and now the number one record in England is Peter Sarsted singing "Where Do You Go to My Lovely." What? Because I had no clue. I had been away, and Peter had been, had suddenly had his own career and wrote this incredible song. So it was amazing.
Yeah, it must be great. Like three brothers that have got that talent. It must be brilliant. That.
Well, it was great. Yeah, I mean, Clive also had had a great song or a hit called "My Resistance Is Low," which was great. And we did try to get together as a band. We tried to be the Bee Gees or whatever you want, but it didn't work out. We didn't have somehow we weren't cut out to be a group. But we gave it we gave it a try.
Yeah, yeah. And you got into acting as well. Like you've appeared in Cheers, Gremlins 2, Pretty Woman, Star Trek. How did that come about?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was living in Beverly Hills, and then I moved to Hollywood. And my wife's sister is Stephanie Powers, who is an actress who did Heart to Heart, and she's one. So I was meeting people that I never dreamed I'd ever meet, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and then someone said, "Well, why don't you try a little bit of acting, if you wanted to?" And I know someone at Paramount Studios, type of thing, So I said, "Oh, really?" Once again, yeah. And so I never really wanted to be an actor because I'm not an actor. And but I can say a few lines now and then. You hear, blah blah blah. So eventually I started working on the behind the scenes on Star Trek: The Next Generation,
Yeah.
and they gave me a few little parts. I dressed as various aliens and blah 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 blah. And then I worked on The Next Generation for 7 years because that's how long it lasted, 7 years. And then the next thing came along, which was Star Trek Voyager, which was the female captain, Kate Mulgrew. So then I worked on that series for one, and eventually they said, "Well, we're going to give you." They gave me a few little roles here and there, and then eventually they gave me a part on the very last show of the seventh season, and in which I'm on the bridge, and I'm helping to save mankind. Yes. So I'm very proud of that. But that was great fun. That was great fun to be involved in the movie business, but not actually being like a movie star or anything. But I was part of it a little bit.
Is it true you appeared in a film like even before you signed to Decca?
Ah, yes, it is. It was a thing called Drinks All Around, and I was briefly in in the film. If I look back, uh, some of the guys, people, obviously Cliff, who had done actual actual movies, and then other guys who had had parts in movies like Billy Fury. I think he had part, and Marty. He's acted, and he was good, and of course Mike Berry, who was he was a star on a TV show. So, pop singers, you sort of graduate, not graduate to it. You're close to that situation, and then someone says, "Would you like to be in this movie?" You say yes, and that's it.
So we mentioned your single, a little bit of rock and roll. What else are you up to these days? Are you still performing live?
I have been performing live. The last time I do a little club here and there, but and my last tour was a couple of years ago, which was the final tour in a series that I'd been doing with Marty Wilde,
Yeah.
and so that was our final tour about 2.5 years ago. Um, and then I've been basically trying to improve my golf game.
Are you any good?
No, no. Um, but once in a while, let's put it this way: as with all go, you have moments, right? You have a moment, you think, "Oh, I think I've cracked this. Oh, that's what I should be doing all the time. Why can't I do that all the time?" And but that's what keeps bringing you back because those little moments where you do actually do something good.
Yeah, definitely. So what is life like for you these days? Is that what you're up to then? Like keeping yourself busy with golf and music and stuff?
Yeah, I'm right. I'm trying to write and actually trying to keep myself fit, basically. So that I can, I'm still walking about. Yeah, um, it's. I'm very happy to be here in America. Living here, but then I can always come back and because I still have friends and family in England,
Yeah.
and hopefully. I can come back and do some shows.
Yeah, brilliant. So with the new single, where can people listen to it?
Well, it's on Spotify. It's on YouTube, and you can listen to it on edenkane.com, my website, and yeah, it's out there. It's out there, and I'm hoping to. I believe it's on the Heritage chart, and it got onto some other. It's got onto another chart at like number 6. I forget the Phoenix thing. So it's making some moves, and it would be great if people could vote. I'm going, please vote. I feel like a politician. Vote for my song. Yeah, for God's sake. But yeah, so that's where it's at because it's all about getting people to hear it and
Yeah, well,
hopefully like it.
I'll leave links to it in the description of that for
Oh,
people.
please. Yeah, please do. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries, but thank you for your time, Richard. It's been an honour to speak to you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for calling.
No worries, thank you, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk to you. And good
Well,
luck with everything.
it's my pleasure, mate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You too. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Take care. Bye.